16th century Europe, where the power of the church was unshakable, where fear was sold in the name of religion, and where truth was bound by the chains of traditions. People were filling the churches with gold and silver in search of salvation. But there was darkness in their hearts. God's grace was being sold and a price had to be paid for the forgiveness of sins. But then a man rose. A monk from an ordinary family, a professor but above all a truth seeker. His name was Martin Luther. His pen was sharper than a sword. His words challenged the emperors. His voice shook the whole world. When he nailed his 95 Theses on the door of the Church of Wittenberg, it was not just a document. It was the bell or freedom that resonated for centuries. This is the story not just of a man but of a revolution. A revolution that not only gave a new form to Christianity, but changed the entire civilization. This is the saga of a struggle that taught us the lesson of religious freedom, democracy, and the power of truth. This is the story of a fire that changed the map of the world forever. So can one man really change the world? Let's step into this journey of revolution and find the answer ourselves. Martin Luther was born on the 10th of November 1483 in Alban, Germany. It was a small mining town, which was then part of the Holy Roman Empire. Parents Hans Luther and Margaret Luther were hardworking and disciplined. His father Hans belonged to a simple farmer family. But he achieved success in the mining industry and became financially prosperous. Hans Luther wanted his son to become a lawyer so that he could further raise the prestige and financial status of the family. That is why he decided to give Martin a good education from childhood. His mother Margaret was a religious woman who raised her children in strict discipline and devotion to God. Martin Luther's early life was full of strict discipline and education. His parents were strict disciplinarians, and many times they also punished the children severely. Later, Luther shared his experience and said that his mother beat him so hard for stealing only one walnut that he bled. His early education took place in the schools of Magdeburg and Eisenach. The medium of instruction in the school was Latin, which was considered the scholarly language of Europe at that time. Luther's education included the following things. Grammar and language, mainly Latin, was taught. Religious studies, teachings of the Catholic Church, and some parts of the Bible. Music. Martin Luther was interested in music from childhood, and he learned to sing hymns. From childhood itself, Luther was inclined towards serious contemplation and introspection. He used to think deeply about life and death, heaven and hell, and the justice of God. He observed the religious practices of the Church very carefully, and many times raised the question whether it was really in accordance with the Bible. In 1501, at the age of 17, Luther took admission in the University of Erfurt in Germany. This university was one of the most prestigious educational institutions in Germany, and mainly arts, philosophy, and law were taught here. Luther studied the following subjects in his early university education, such as logic, philosophy, grammar, arts, and literature. He was a brilliant student and succeeded in impressing his teachers. In 1505, he obtained the degree of Bachelor of Arts and later Master of Arts. Now his father wanted him to study law so that he could become a high-ranking lawyer. Martin Luther's life was about to change completely. In July 1505, when he was returning from his home to the university, a terrible storm came on the way. There was lightning. It was raining heavily and the clouds were thundering. Suddenly a lightning struck him, causing him to fall to the ground. In that terrible moment, Luther felt that his death was near. Panicked, he prayed loudly. "Saint Anna, help me. If I survive, I will become a monk." Saint Anna was considered the patroness of miners, and perhaps Luther called out her name because of his father's profession. The storm stopped and Luther was safe. He took this as a sign from God and decided to devote his life completely to God. Only 2 weeks after the storm, on 17 July 1505, Luther took a big decision. He joined the Austinian monastery at Erfurt. This monastery was famous for strict discipline, and life here was full of rigorous penance. When his father got this news, he became very angry. He told his son that this decision was foolish because he had worked hard for years to make Luther a lawyer. But Luther remained firm on his decision. Now he was going to start a new life. A monastic life that was completely devoted to prayer, study and penance. Martin Luther's daily life had the following strict rules. Prayer and meditation. It was mandatory to pray 7 times a day. Fasting at Mass, he had to fast for many days. Physical labor, cleaning in the monastery, kitchen work, and other daily tasks had to be done. Confession of sins. It was necessary to confess one's sins every day. Excommunication and penance, self-restraint and self-torture were encouraged. Luther began to follow all these rules fanatically. He often punished himself physically. He prayed for hours and kept strict fasts. Luther's main purpose of coming to the monastery was to receive forgiveness of his sins and spiritual peace. But on the contrary, his spiritual struggle deepened by staying in the monastery. Luther's biggest question was, how can I be justified before God? He devoted himself completely to penance. But still, he did not believe that God had accepted him. He thought about his sins day and night and would spend hours confessing to the priests, considering even the smallest sins serious. His teacher and others in the monastery said that he was feeling very guilty. But Luther did not find peace. He was afraid that if he was not completely perfect, he would go to hell. The head of the monastery, John van Stopitz, saw this internal conflict of Luther. He encouraged Luther to rely only on God's grace and not on his works. Stopitz told Luther that God is not only a just but also a loving Father. Do not look only at your sins, but rely on the sacrifice of Christ. He encouraged Luther to focus his thoughts on the study of the Scriptures. At the suggestion of Stopitz, Luther began serious study of the Bible. He was allowed to read the Latin Virginal Bible. He began to study the books of Psalms, Romans, Galatians and Hebrews in particular. He read Romans 17, "The righteous shall live by faith." This verse was revolutionary for him. Seeing Martin Luther's devotion, he was ordained a priest in 1507. The first time he served the Lord's Supper, he was very scared. He felt that he was not worthy to stand before such a holy God. But gradually he began to overcome his spiritual struggle. In 1508, Stopitz sent Luther to the University of Wittenberg, where he could study the Bible in depth. He completed his theology degree. In 1512, he received the title of Doctor of Theology. After this, he became a professor of Bible at the University of Wittenberg. Now Luther was ready for a new journey. He left for France in 1518. Gradually he began to understand that salvation is possible only by faith and not by works. As Luther studied the Bible deeply, he realized that some of the teachings of the Catholic Church did not match the Bible. In particular, he thought deeply about the following topics. First, the righteous will live by faith, Romans 1:17. Second, salvation is only by the grace of God and not by man's works. Third, the customs and traditions of the Church. Many times they had deviated from the truth of the Bible. Many principles and practices of the Roman Catholic Church were prevalent at that time. Luther objected to some of them. The Church taught that by buying absolution, a person can get forgiveness of his or his loved one's sins. It was taught that if a person has died and gone to hell in the interim, then, by paying money, he can be sent to heaven. A priest named Johann Tatchell was selling these absolution letters and used to say that as soon as your coin falls into the safe, the soul will fly to heaven. The Pope was considered to be the representative of Jesus Christ, and everything he said was considered to be God's command. But Luther saw that the Pope and the Church officials often behaved contrary to the teachings of the Bible. The Church taught that good deeds along with faith are necessary for salvation. But it became clear to Luther that salvation is only attained by grace and faith and not by works. Luther was thinking deeply on all these subjects. He was seeing that the church officials and the Pope were making money in the name of religion and deceiving the common people. On October 31, 1517, Luther prepared a list of 95 solid arguments against the mistakes of the Church. He hung this list on Theodorof, the Church of Wittenberg. This list was especially against the indulgences. His main argument was that salvation is attained only by faith and not by buying church certificates. The main points of the 95 arguments were as follows. First, salvation is possible only by grace and faith and not by church certificates. Second, the Pope does not have the power to send people to heaven. Third, only God can forgive sins, not man. Fourth, the Church should stop charging money from the poor. Fifth, the Bible is the ultimate truth, not the Pope's orders. When Luther put up these 95 theses on the door of the church, someone made a copy of it and printed it and spread it throughout Germany. Because of the printing press, these ideas spread throughout Europe. Many people agreed with Luther and were already angry with the corruption of the Church. But Pope Leo X and the officials of the Roman Catholic Church saw this as a major rebellion. Johann Tetzel, who was selling absolution letters, started defaming Luther by calling him a rebel and a heretic. The Church ordered Luther to withdraw his views. Otherwise he would be declared a heretic. In 1518, Luther was called to Augsburg, where the church official Cardinal Thomas Cajetan questioned him. Cajetan ordered Luther to withdraw his views. But Luther said that he would change his views only on the basis of the Bible and not on the orders of the church. Hearing this, the cardinal was very angry and planned to send Luther to Rome. But Luther escaped from there. In 1519, Luther was called for a debate with church scholar Johann Eck in Leipzig. During the debate, Luther clearly said that the supremacy of the Pope and the Church is not written in the Bible. He also said that many principles of the Church are wrong and the Bible is final authority. After this debate, the Church began to consider Luther more dangerous. In 1520, Pope Leo X issued an order called Ex Arc Domine, in which Luther was warned to withdraw his views, or else he would be excommunicated from the Church. Luther rejected this order and rejected the authority of the Church. He publicly burned the Pope's order. After this, the Pope officially expelled Luther from the Church in 1521. In 1521, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V called Luther to the city of Worms, where a case was filed against him. Emperor Charles V, high officials of the Church, and many royal leaders were present in this meeting. Luther was ordered to reject his views. Luther's historic answer was that until I am satisfied with the evidence of Bible, I cannot withdraw my views. My conscience is imprisoned in the Word of God. Here I stand. I cannot do anything else. May God help me. Amen. Hearing this, there was a stir in the meeting. The emperor declared Luther a king, due to which his life was in danger. After the Council of Worms, the emperor ordered that no one should give shelter to Luther, and that he should be caught and handed over to the church. But Frederick III, who was the King of Saxony, was a supporter of Luther. He secretly kidnapped Luther and sent him to a safe place in the fortress of Wachtburg. Here Luther started translating the Bible into German. Luther believed that true faith lies in understanding the Bible and living according to it. But at that time the Bible was available online in Latin language, which common people could not understand. Only the priests of the church could read it and controlled the common people. During his stay in Wittenberg, Luther translated the New Testament from Greek to German. He completed the New Testament in just 11 weeks in 1522. Later, he also translated the Old Testament, which was completed in 1534. His translation was in easy language for common people. For the first time common people could read the Bible in their own language. The monopoly of the Catholic Church on power and knowledge started ending. The Reformation movement started spreading rapidly in Germany. When Luther returned to Wittenberg in 1524, he saw that the Reformation movement was becoming violent. Some people had started attacking churches and breaking idols. Luther preached that the way of reform should be through peace and preaching the truth of the Bible, and not through violence. His return gave a new direction to the Reformation movement. In 1524, farmers in Germany revolted against the atrocities of the feudal lords and the church. They took inspiration from Luther's ideas and demanded reformation. But Luther did not support this violence. He told the peasants to reform through Christ's love and peace and not by the force of the sword. Many peasant leaders considered this a betrayal. But Luther believed that change should come only from spiritual awakening and not from bloodshed. Martin Luther was a Catholic priest, and at that time it was forbidden for priests to marry. But Luther believed that marriage is a natural and sacred institution according to the Bible. In 1525, he married a girl named Katharina von Bora. Katharina was a former nun who had left the strict traditions of the church and adopted reformist ideas. This showed that priests could also marry, which was against the teachings of the Catholic Church. This gave freedom to reformist priests, that they could marry and have families. Luther and Katharina had 6 children, and their family became an example that the life of a priest can be a balanced and normal life, and not just asceticism. Luther's ideas were no longer limited to Germany. In other countries of Europe too, people were troubled by the corruption of the church and wanted reform. In 1526, various states of Germany decided to make their churches independent. This laid the foundation of the Protestant Church. The main features of the Protestant Church were: 1. The Bible is the supreme authority and not the Pope. 2. Salvation is only by faith and not by works. 3. Church services should be in their local language and not in Latin. 4. Priests can marry and start families. In 1529, Emperor Charles V tried to re-establish the Roman Catholic Church and announced a ban on the reformers. The reformist leaders of Germany opposed this and formally wrote a letter of protest. This is why Luther and his followers came to be called Protestants. Luther's disciple Philip Melanchthon wrote a document called Augsburg Confession, in which the main principles of the Protestant faith were given. This gave an official identity to the Protestant Church. Martin Luther's life was transformative, and the influence of his teachings began to spread throughout Europe. In 1531, the German states united to protect the Protestant faith and formed the Schmalkaldic League. It was a political and religious alliance, in which many kings and nobles together formed a front against the Roman Catholic Emperor Charles V. By this time, the Reformation movement also started growing rapidly in Switzerland, Scandinavia, and England. Luther and Katharina von Bora had a successful marriage and raised 6 children. Luther wrote many books, lectures, and sermons to improve the service of the Church. He also wrote religious hymns for the common people. One of them, Our God is a Mighty Fortress, became very famous. He was also active in helping the poor, and wanted to develop the Church as a center of social service. During 1541–45, Luther was also involved in the political affairs of the Church and the Empire. He struggled to strengthen the Protestant movement and save it from the repression of Emperor Charles V, but during this time his health conditions started deteriorating. He had arthritis and heart problems. Martin Luther died on the 18th of February 1546, when he was in his birthplace Alban. His last prayer was, "O God, I commit my soul into your hands," and he was buried in his own birthplace. Martin Luther's life and work had a profound impact on Christianity and European history. Permanent establishment of the Protestant Church. Due to his ideas, new churches were formed all over Europe, separate from the Catholic Church. His German translation gave the common people the right to read the Bible themselves. Religious freedom and personal faith. He proved that the relationship with God is personal, and the mediation of the Church is not necessary. Impact on education and society. His efforts led to education reform in schools and universities. The Protestant Reformation movement continued even after Martin Luther's death. His followers and other reformers carried forward his teachings. But the Roman Catholic Church also did not sit quiet. They took a tough stand against the reformers, which is known in history as Catholic Revival. Luther's closest disciple Philip Melanchthon played an important role in organizing the Protestant Church. He put forward the Augsburg Confession, which became the main document of the Protestant faith. He was trying to make Luther's ideas politically acceptable by softening them a bit, so that a compromise could be reached with Emperor Charles V. But many staunch Lutherans could not accept it and stood against him. Emperor Charles V, who was a supporter of the Roman Catholic Church, waged a war against the Protestant states in 1546. This war ended in 1547, when the emperor's forces defeated the Schmalkaldic League Protestant alliance. After this, Charles V tried to strengthen the Catholic Church again, but could not succeed completely. After the war, the Treaty of Augsburg was signed in 1555. Under this treaty, the ruler of every state in Germany was given the right to decide whether his state would be Catholic or Protestant. This gave legal recognition to the Protestant Church. But this conflict continued throughout Europe. John Calvin gave a new form to the Reformation movement in Geneva, Switzerland. He believed that God had already decided who would attain salvation, which is called predetermination. His followers were called Calvinists, who took forward the Reformation movement in France, Scotland, and Netherlands. In England, King Henry VIII separated from the Catholic Church and established the Church of England. The reason for this was that the Pope did not allow him to divorce, due to which he got angry, and he made the Church independent in England. Later, England became completely Protestant under the rule of Queen Elizabeth I. The Catholic Church made many reforms to stop the Reformation movement and maintain its power. Saint Ignatius Loyola founded the Jesuits in 1540. It was a Catholic missionary organization whose aim was to counter the Protestant Reformation and preach Christianity. He emphasized on education, preaching and missionary work and established many universities. In this council held between 1545 and 1583, the Catholic Church made many reforms in its rules. They banned corruption and the sale of indulgences. But they also made it clear that the power of the Pope would remain and the Protestant ideology was rejected. The idea of religious freedom was born due to the teachings of Luther and other reformers. People believed that they could worship God according to their own conscience, without the permission of any religious institution. Luther translated the Bible into German, and other countries also translated the Bible into local languages. This increased literacy and the common people began to understand the scriptures. Luther established that the Bible is the supreme authority of Christianity, and not the traditions of the Church, or the orders of the Pope. This idea remains the foundation of Protestant Christianity today. His German translation started the tradition of translating the Bible into other languages. This allowed the common people to read and understand the scriptures themselves. Luther taught that salvation is by faith alone, not by church rules or good deeds. This added a personal and spiritual aspect to Christianity, which is still seen in the Protestant tradition today. Luther's reforms freed the Christian churches from the subordination of the Roman Catholic Pope. This led to the establishment of local churches in different countries: Lutheran, Anglican, Baptist, etc. Luther gave the idea that every person should have the freedom to live according to his faith. Later, this idea became the foundation of democratic governments and human rights. The struggles for religious freedom in Europe and America in the 18th and 19th centuries were inspired by Luther's teachings. Luther advocated keeping church and politics separate. This idea later became the basis of the U.S. Constitution and the secular structure of European countries. Luther insisted on making education compulsory for all, so that people could read the Bible themselves. His efforts laid the foundation of the universal education system in Europe. Many universities and schools were opened inspired by his teachings. After Luther's criticisms, the Catholic Church also carried out internal reforms. During the Second Vatican Council, the Catholic Church allowed prayers in local languages and adopted many reformist policies. Luther's German Bible translation gave a standardized form to the German language. This also promoted German literature and nationalism. Luther himself was a composer and wrote many church hymns. Famous composers like Johann Sebastian Bach included Luther's hymns in their compositions. His teachings also brought revolutionary changes in painting and literature. Even today, Luther's ideas play an important role in religious, social and political issues. Today many people give more importance to personal faith than to the Church, which is a result of Luther's thinking. Luther proved that the Church should keep introspecting and reforming from time to time. This idea is still seen in the reformist movements within Christianity today. Luther's ideas gave birth to modern principles of individual freedom, morality, and justice. The influence of his reformist ideas can be clearly seen in today's democratic societies. Today more The 900 million people all over the world are followers of Protestant Christianity. Today the Bible has been fully translated into more than 700 languages and partially translated into more than 1,500 languages. Luther believed that every person should be educated so that he can read and understand the Bible himself. The public education system started with this thinking. There was no tradition of educating women in Luther's time. But he said that women should also read the Bible. This idea gradually proved helpful in promoting women's education and social rights. Luther's German translation helped in the standardization of the German language. Nowadays, in the age of internet and social media, churches have adopted new methods like online preaching, virtual church services, and digital Bible study. Luther's Reformation movement was also successful due to printing technology, printing press. Therefore, in today's digital age, the use of digital media by churches is an extension of the same thinking. Martin Luther's story is not just a chapter of the past. It is a living legacy. A movement that beats in the hearts of all those who stand for truth, freedom and reform. His revolution is not limited to the 16th century. It continues even today. Within you, within me and within all those who want to spread light against darkness. You are a part of this story. Luther was not alone. His fight included all those who embraced the truth and carried it forward. Today this responsibility lies with all of us. Have you ever asked yourself how deep your faith is? Do you stand for truth and reform in your life? Are you ready to understand your faith and remain firm in it? If yes, then tell us in the comments, and if you like this testimony, then please like, share and subscribe.